Today's workshop is Nurturing Wellness for Parents of Children with Disabilities. I'm excited to introduce you to Kheya Ganguly, Director of Trauma Prevention and Resilience Development at the State of Vermont Agency of Human Services. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. As was said, my name is Kheya Ganguly. I am the Director of Trauma Prevention and Resilience Development. Workshop that I'm going to do today, I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm probably going to speed talk my way through it because there's so much information. But please feel free to ask questions. I will make sure I leave time at the end for some. And with that, I'm just going to get going so we get as much time as we can. So, first of all, one of the things I want to say is that I call care of self rather than self-care because I think we're all tired of hearing about self-care. And for many of us, all it does is make us feel bad. I also want to talk about my definition of of mental health. Okay, so mental health isn't an absence of illness or mental illness, it's a presence of wellness. So these two things can be true at the same time, and that we don't talk about that very often. So, second caveat I'm going to give you, and you're not going to like me, is self care is not easy. It is work. It is something that you have to really dig into yourself and figure out because, as Dr. Puja Lakshman has said, if it's somebody else's answer, it can never be your solution because we are all individual, very cool, and flawed human beings. So, what works for me may not work for you. And Audre Lorde said, caring for myself is not self indulgence, it is self preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Because we are taught that putting ourselves first is selfish. And it's not, because if you're not well, it's hard to help people around you be well. Of course, it's doing this. Just bear with me because my screen is doing something a little odd here. Okay. Okay, so what does the world tell us about self-care? So take a minute and think about all the things that you've heard or seen about self-care. Does somebody if somebody wants to and think about when and where you first heard those words, what context you heard them in, and how they make you feel. A lot of people I've talked to are just like, if somebody else tells me to take a bubble bath or do yoga, I am going to scream because those are the images we get. Right now, self care is a $2 billion, actually went up, but I think in the United States, it's a $2 billion industry that happens a lot on Instagram. And like I said earlier, just makes us feel bad because we see these pictures of like impossibly tall blonde women in weird yoga poses or with like four beautifully clean, dressed in white linen children, and everything looks perfect. And we just look at that and are like, what am I doing wrong? And that's not what I want for us. So here's the thing. The root of self-care is not indulgence. It's not, the very base of it. It is not going to the spa, doing your nails. It's something that's necessary. Okay. And really, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the way that the theory on how our different needs as humans are ranked, The base level of that is physiological: breathing, food, water, sleep, sex, homeostasis, excretion. So, what do they tell us to do for self care? Drink lots of water, get rest, eat nutritiously, exercise. So, gee, that all sounds like awful lot like survival. Okay. I don't look at that as self care. That's meeting your basic needs. And it's based on a medical model, which is one reason it doesn't fit a lot of us. Another thing you need to know that we have this myth, especially I think for women, that we can have it all. You know, you can work 80 hours a week and have your kids and have a clean house and do X, Y, and Z. That's a myth. Really, honestly, you have to start making choices about what you want and what you don't want and what you're willing to let slide. For example, I like a clean house. I hate cleaning. I am a busy person and I juggled my schedule around so I have someone come in and clean my house. And it's worth that bit of money to me for the peace of mind. I'm not, and it's a privilege. I'm going to be the first person to say I have a privilege that I can afford to do that. And I will freely acknowledge it. But it saves my sanity. So it's one of the things I do. Fact: self care is not another thing for you to fail at, because that's how a lot of us feel, is that we're just failing at everything. Care of self is based on who you are, not what you are. So, understand in our culture, part of the issue that I think we look at and don't realize is we've taken the idea of wellness and foisted it on an individual and saying you're solely responsible and you can buy it, measure it, and hold it up for everyone to see as a personal success. I ran 8 marathons this year. Okay, things like that. We're doing that instead of investing in making our social systems healthy. And what do I mean by that? There was a study of new parents in Sweden, and one of the things they found, when fathers, not mothers, but fathers, were given 30 days of flexible paid paternity leave, there was a 26% decrease in the number of anti-anxiety prescriptions written for new mothers. In contrast, here in the United States, less than 5% of fathers get more than 2 weeks of leave. And I can tell you that there's many studies that show American women report higher stress levels than men, but also feel like they're not doing a good job managing it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is all of these things that are going on, and we're saying you're failing at self-care, this is big business. They're really, honestly, they're not in it to make you feel better. They're in it to make money. So it makes it really challenging. You know, there's, you know, there's another thought that when you start looking at the stats, like the ones I gave you about Sweden, postpartum depression has also been shown to go down when fathers get parental leave. So there's a lot of interesting pieces that sort of feed into this. Now, the history of self care, I'm not going to go into it really deeply, but it comes out of the psychiatric hospitals in the 1950s to help psych patients be more self sufficient. Went from there to academia, and from there to the Black Panthers, and became part of the civil rights movement. And then it got co opted, and now we have what we have today, which is a weird mix of medical model and new age stuff. So the other piece that you need to know is what happens is people give you lots of methods to take care of yourself rather than principles. And what do I mean? A method could be useful once to solve a specific type of problem. But principles can be applied broadly and over again. So, fake self care, let's say, is a method. In the moment, you're going to go for a run to improve your mood, but it doesn't change the circumstances which caused the mood. So, part of what I'm saying is you're really going to start having to dig into some of this stuff because I'm going to challenge you to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to self care, to think ahead and not just say, oh, I feel terrible. I am going to go get my nails done. Well, you haven't addressed the reason you feel terrible. So it doesn't help you a lot. So false self care comes from the outside. It's usually a noun describing an activity or a product you can buy. It doesn't change anything in your relationships and doesn't do anything to change larger systems. So, like I said, common examples: a yoga class, a meditation app, fancy face cream. There's nothing wrong inherently with any of these if you're actually addressing your system or your family. A lot of times people feel further away from who they are, especially when this doesn't work. And often it comes with feelings of guilt, either for not taking care of yourself right, or, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm taking time out to get a massage. I should be doing X, Y, and Z first. I should be spending my money here. It also lets you brush aside or avoid any kind of emotional work, risks to make yourself feel better. So, real care self comes from inside you are, and it is a verb. It's describing an internal decision making process, and it will allow you to get your needs met in your relationships, in larger systems. It brings you closer to who you are and what's important to you. And it also, we've got to do the work and learn to cope with feelings of guilt as part of this process, because you will feel guilty because we've been socialized to not be selfish. And there may be some short-term emotional costs to get longer term emotional gains. So this is not easy. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. What gets in the way are these ideas of escape, achievement, and optimization. And what I mean by that is self-care is going to let you escape from yourself. Calgon, take me away. I'm probably dating myself, but that was a commercial for bubble baths when I was little. Um, if you use self-care to escape from regular life, it might be temporarily enjoyable, but it doesn't make lasting change because you go back to whatever was going on. Achievement. We try to look at self-care as, what have I gotten done? What have I accomplished? And finally, there's this optimization idea of, if I just do everything and use, a lifestyle service, like we have 3 calendars, my calendar, my husband's calendar, and our family calendar, and I have a meal delivery service, and I've done blah, 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 all of these things, trying to optimize time or our lives, it doesn't always work. A lot of people, I bet all of you said to yourself at one point, and I know I have, I wish there were more hours in the day. And that response or idea is coming from your prefrontal cortex, which just is pushing you to get things done. Your feeling parts of your brain are probably screaming from exhaustion. So people who are really getting hyper focused on being productive and trying to make all the pieces fit can often ping pong back and forth between feeling dread and then feeling relief. So understand there's nothing wrong with time saving apps or calendars or anything like that, but don't think that they are the route to self-care, or, like I say, care of self. What I want for you is well-being, hedonic versus eudaimonic. So hedonic kind of well-being, it's a state of happiness or pleasure. And this comes from like the diets, the cleanses, retreats, life hacks is aligned with this. So that means I go away for a weekend, I feel great. I come home and walk in my door and go, oh my God, look at everything I have to do. A eudaimonic well-being focuses on deriving meaning and having actions being congruent with values. So it means one, that you have purpose, you have personal growth, and that you're willing to accept yourself, warts and all, and that it's okay to have flaws and faults, and maybe you didn't get to dust this week or whatever it might be because you were celebrating you. So, what are the principles of care of self? The first thing you need to do is set boundaries with others. And I will be talking about how to do it, because I'm sure all of you have been told you need to have boundaries, and most of you have not been told how to create them or what are the steps. You need to change how you talk to yourself, what you're saying to yourself. You need to bring into your life what matters most to you. And you need to be willing to use personal power. So understand the root of all of this is setting your boundaries. And this is work. So, what are signs that you need to work on your boundaries? You're neglecting self care. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're resentful of all the demands on you. You try to avoid things. You feel burnout. You daydream about forgetting about everything. If even a couple of these are true, you need to work on your boundaries. So, what are they? Okay, boundaries are expectations and needs that help you feel safe in your relationships. And I'm talking about all kinds of relationships: friends, family, romantic partners, workmates, colleagues, acquaintances, anybody you interact with. These are what you're willing to say, I can accept or I can't accept. You know, what's the meaning of boundaries? It's giving people a reasonable way to understand how they can behave around you. It also allows you to identify how you're going to respond when someone crosses a line. You know, a person who has, and I don't like the word healthy, but that's what we use. I will say, I don't even know a word to use, who has boundaries. We'll just leave it at that. You can communicate your needs and wants. You value your own opinions. You don't compromise them. You can say no to other people. You can let other people say no to you. Understand boundaries are going to be different for everybody, and that they can vary according to culture. I've been told so many times by American therapists that my family is enmeshed, which means we're all tangled up together, because that's my culture. That doesn't mean it's not healthy, it's just how my culture functions. So a boundary is a cue to other people about how to treat you. Okay. And there are three types of boundaries: porous, rigid, permeable. A porous boundary is really weakly expressed. It can be tied into an inability to say no, people pleasing, fears of rejection. What that means is you say, okay, my boundary is I don't take work phone calls after 4:30. And every time your phone rings after 4:30 and it's work, you answer it. So you're not backing up. You may say it, but you're letting people push your boundaries around. Then there are rigid boundaries. That's building walls to keep other people out and keeping yourself safe. It lets you avoid vulnerability, cut people out, having very, very strict rules. Permeable boundaries are flexible. They're sturdy. You know what they are. You've thought this through, You know what you're willing to do or not do, but you're willing to make an exception to the rule. For example, someone's boundary might be, I don't ever lend money to anybody. Okay. And you don't. And then a really, really close friend comes over and just says, I need to vent about my day. And she vents and said, I had all this happen. My car broke down. It's going to be a $500 fix. And I'm just frustrated because it's going to leave me so short for the rest of the month. And you may know internally, okay, my boundaries, I don't lend money to others. She's not asking me to lend her money, but I have an extra $300 sitting in the bank. I may offer because I trust this person, I know them, and say, look, I never lend money to anyone, but how about I lend you part of the money and you can pay me back when you have time. So this is an example of having a permeable boundary that allows me to support other people when I'm not harming myself. $300 is extra. So, so how do you set it's a part process. One is communicating them. The other is taking action. What does that mean? Step one, be clear. Mind your tone. Really honestly, we don't sometimes think about how it sounds when we're saying something, and be really straightforward and precise. Um, Directly state what you need, what you're requesting, or your no. And yes, it is okay to say no to others without an explanation. But one of the things you need to do is ask for what you want and identify your expectations. So, what does that mean? It means that I am going to tell you that I don't answer email after 4:30. You are welcome to send email after 4:30, but I need you to understand that I will not reply until the next day. Clear boundary, people know it, everyone knows what's going to happen. This is super uncomfortable, especially the first couple times you're doing it. You're going to feel guilt, and you need to remind yourself it's healthy to have these boundaries. Other people have them. And really honestly, if setting a boundary ruins a relationship, the relationship was on the cusp of ending anyway. Fear, your people are going to think badly of you. Maybe I'm going to say it wrong. Maybe people won't talk to me anymore. There's sadness. You want to be nice. You don't know how other people are going to react. So you just worry and tie yourself up in a knot. There is remorse. Okay. Did I, that second thinking voice in your head? Did I go too far? Was I harsh? Oh my gosh, what did I just do? And then there's awkwardness. And in some ways, this is up to you. Is you feel awkward, but instead of playing out, just keep doing what you normally do. Behave the way you want. Understand when you're communicating with people, there are unsuccessful and successful methods of communicating your needs. So when you're unsuccessful, you're being passive. You may have an issue, you don't say anything, you ignore things. I've heard people say sharing my needs makes me uncomfortable, so I just keep them to myself. Then people are aggressive. They might demean others, they might yell, they might, I can't believe you're doing this, even though I told you not to. And, you know, that's not okay. Then of course there's the passive aggressive people who, just sit there and, looking upset but not saying anything to anyone. Or you're moody for no known reason. You're gossiping. All those things that you're unhappy, but you're not being direct about why you're unhappy. And then some people are really manipulative when they communicate. They do things to make other people feel guilty. They really want people to feel bad for what they did. Now, a successful way to communicate when you're trying to set your boundaries is being assertive. And that doesn't mean being rude. It's just really clearly understand what you're asking for and responding in the moment when someone crosses a boundary. So really clear, really direct, and no personal attacks. Because you know something? We all also make mistakes and cross people's boundaries. You know, I've had people say to me, I'll come in and my phone rings and they're like, I sent you an email last night. Why haven't you responded yet? I hear that you sent me an email. I've just sat down on my desk. As I told you before, I don't check my email from home. So after 4:30, I don't look at it till the next day. I'm just getting in there. I will look at it and respond to you as quickly as I can. I didn't apologize, you know. I restated my boundary and I was pretty clear. So when you're trying to set boundaries in a current relationship where you're doing this with somebody that already exists, is first of all, you need to do the work of identifying where you need limits set. You know, don't explain, set needs, be consistent, restate whenever you have to. In new relationships, you know, you can mention it casually in a conversation. I usually mention it like the first time I meet somebody at work, my email rule that, you know, hey, it's really nice to meet you. We'll chit chat. I'm like, just so you know, if you email me after 4:30, I usually don't, not usually, I don't answer because I don't look at my email till I get in the next day. Be willing to discuss, you know, be really clear. First time someone does it, you know, let them know, you know, I saw your email, but as I don't answer emails until I get in the next day, I didn't respond. Um, People will give you some really difficult reactions. They will push back. They will test your limits and try to break your boundaries to see what will happen. They will try to rationalize why you should break your boundary and question why you have it. They can get angry and defensive, or they cannot talk to you. You know, these are all people who are really trying to figure out where the line is drawn. So just be prepared. I'm going to tell you, this isn't fun or easy. Okay, there are 6 types of boundaries, which is not something we talk about often. You have physical boundaries, which is personal space and touch, and culture can really affect this. You have sexual boundaries, you know, expressing consent. A lot of times these are unspoken. Um, and things that fall under here too are comments about appearance, um, touching, jokes, harassment, all of that falls under here. There are intellectual boundaries, your thoughts and ideas, how you express them, how appropriately you express them. And things that can fall under here that are being done to you could be name calling, it could be yelling, ridicule, demeaning. All of that is in the mind, in the realm of the intellect. Emotional. Um, Here's the thing with emotional. It's okay to share your emotions and it's okay to expect support, but understanding that some boundaries that you may want to be thinking about are sharing too much too soon with people. Um, what are boundaries between you and children? You know, what's appropriate to talk, what's not, and validating how people feel, telling people how they feel. These are all areas where people may push. Material boundaries. What you own is what you own. It's your stuff, your choice. Okay. So understand because people might keep things too long. Like one of my boundaries is I am willing to lend my car to you only if you can afford to replace it. If you crash it, like you have good insurance. My insurance is not going to cover you. If you don't have that, then no, you cannot borrow my car. And time. How do you manage your time? How do you allow others to manage your time? Like, do others expect you to drop whatever you're doing to go help them or text you at weird hours or you know, people ask you for favors at work, but you don't get paid for them. You know, you overcommit to stuff. So part of this is really looking at your time and deciding what is valuable, what is not valuable. What am I willing to give up? And it's not selfish. I will say that over and over again. It is okay to save some time for yourself. When my kids were little, I was not a morning person at all. Okay. I was one of those people that stayed up all night. But I used to make myself get up like an hour before they would get up, just so I could have some time to myself. And that was a sacrifice I was willing to give up because I'm like, I really like my pillow and my bed and I'd like to sleep, but I'd really like to have time to drink a cup of coffee and maybe read a book. Okay. Next thing you need is self compassion. Okay. How many of you, think about this, have a little voice in the back of your head that criticizes everything you do on a fairly regular basis? I know I certainly do. Because here's the thing, and my little voice, when I really thought about it, is my mother. It's her voice in the back of my head telling me I'm doing things wrong. So understand that I'm not talking about self esteem, I'm talking about self compassion. Self esteem builds up our psychological defenses by making us feel good about ourselves. Self compassion is a way that we have clarity about ourselves. It's reflecting inwards and and noticing how we treat ourselves. Because I say the meanest things to myself, and I thought about it and went, if I said that out loud to someone, I would be mortified. But it's okay for that to run in my head. You know, people who can cultivate self compassion are likely to be proactive in making positive changes in their lives, are able to be assertive, and there was a study of 100 mothers that showed women who had higher levels of self compassion had fewer negative thoughts and less judgmental view about themselves. So, in other words, all those voices are telling you you're being a bad mom. That's your inner critic poking at you. And the higher level of self compassion you have, the better you can be. Being curious about your negative thoughts instead of believing them as immediate truth is a good one. I can tell you one of the things that I do, or I did, and it was fascinating to me, is I spent a week writing down every negative thought that came into my head as they came into my head. And I was shocked at the number of things how regularly I was thinking it. So one of the things I can say is that helped me identify and then name my inner critic. I realize it sounds like my mom. I've had someone tell me that their inner critic sounds like Lisa Simpson from the Simpsons cartoon. But it's really interesting because what I'm asking you to do is treat yourself with humanity. Recognize your shortcomings or the way which life doesn't match your expectations. Instead of taking out the boxing gloves and beating yourself up, how about being kind to yourself? And that's why I call it care of self, because I'm asking you to care for yourself like you would care for others. Um, so yeah, think about that. When things go wrong, try it even for a day of writing out every negative thought that comes in your head. The other piece you need to know is real care of self requires treating yourself with humanity, being in tune with what you need, and really being kind. So think of it this way: self compassion is a lens through which you're looking at yourself. And it recognizes, okay, I'm not good at that. I'm a horrible cleaner. Um, but gosh, I cook well. And if I have a house cleaner come in, gives me time to cook for my family. Um, Understand that naming your inner critic will really help you tame that. There's also a role of shame. Okay, we're all good at feeling shame, and it occurs when you're feeling wrong as a person. It's a feeling of being othered and not belonging. Like one mom might feel guilty because she yelled at her kids, but another mom may feel shame because she's a bad mom for yelling at her kids. Instead of, wow, I don't like how I handled that. I've got to figure out a way to express my frustration without yelling the next time. Okay. The other piece is you need to stop trying to be perfect. That's part of care of self. You need to live in the land of good enough. So I'm okay with, you need to be telling yourself, I'm okay with making mistakes. I don't need to listen to the cruel voice in my head. I am not defined by being selfish or selfless. It's just as important to consider me as I consider everybody else when making a decision. And know that whatever compassion I give to others, I can give to me too. And that's okay. Okay, now I'm going to start speed talking. So, perfection doesn't exist. All right, none of us are perfect. It's okay to receive help. We're all often bad at that. You need to understand anger and understand that it's okay to feel anger. It's okay to express anger. It's how you express it that we need to work on. And connect with your body. A lot of times we disembody ourselves to deal with what's going on, like mindlessly scrolling social media, forgetting to eat or drink, exercising to the point where we injure ourselves. These are things where you're removed from your body. So you need to start living in the body. So, self compassion checklist. These are the things that, if you give yourself self compassion, you need to give yourself permission. You have to give it to yourself. You can't expect it to come from other people. Don't be a martyr. Your inner critic may have gotten you success in other things, but it's not the only voice that matters. Perfectionism is an illusion, and it leads to loneliness and feeling demoralized and disconnected because you feel like you're constantly failing. You do not have to be down and out and on your last lung full of oxygen to take help or to reach out and ask for it. It is okay to do that. And if you understand what's making you angry, because a lot of times our anger is self-directed too, it helps you get closer to being self-compassionate. And allowing yourself to rest is okay. It lets you reclaim energy. Because what you're really feeling right now, we call it burnout, but it's actually betrayal. You're betraying yourself and what you need. So understand, like I said, there's no such thing as balancing work and family. Some things got to give somewhere. And when you're at a fork in the road, you have to pick a path. If you try to do too much at the same time, you will burn out. Okay, we have personal power. One of the best things I can tell you is both and is true. What does that mean? So you can have a parent who is dying and be experiencing real joy with your husband or your partner. So you can feel real extreme sadness and real extreme happiness at the same time. You can have a parent, let's say, with dementia. This is really strikes home for me. It's something I've dealt with. And love your parent, but also realize you can't be your parent's sole caregiver. Especially in my culture, that's horrible to say. You're supposed to, extended family takes care of everybody. So both are true. And I can find her someplace safe to be. Community care, where we care for each other, I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes. The other thing is treat Trade cynicism for agency. We spend a lot of time being really cynical about the world. And instead of doing that, acknowledging and accepting that we do have some power and we can give that power where we want. Maybe it's donating time, maybe it's going to the library, maybe it's writing a check, whatever it might be, you do have power. And money is not the only power. It's okay to plant seeds, like say, okay, this is where I want to get, so I'm going to take the baby steps to get there. Then establish hope as a practice. That means you're going to problem solve when something comes up. You're going to like, one of my things is I write down a piece of paper and write every wild idea I can think of to deal with it. You can regulate your feelings. You can really hold on to who you are. You can, relational coping means you can actually use your relationships to build your power and to cope with what's going on. You can pay it forward. Someone did the other day, I pulled up to the drive-through, I was getting coffee at Starbucks, and someone had paid for my coffee. It was really cool. So I paid for the person behind me and went off. But it was just that made my day, that someone was just being that kind. All right, so what are practical ideas you can do for different types of self-care or care of self? Again, these may not work for you. There are millions of ideas, but these are some suggestions. So if you're trying to care for yourself emotionally, you can practice gratitude. I do that every single day. I have to give myself 3 things I'm grateful for every day. You can use the arts to express how you're feeling. Color, draw. I don't care if you make stick figures. That's fine. I'm a fabric artist. I knit and I crochet and I weave. You need to manage anxiety, depression, and neurospiciness, as we like to call it. Avoiding that isn't going to help. And not dealing, really honestly, with mental health issues is the absolute 100% sure way to sabotage care of self. Celebrate small wins and start identifying things that trigger you. Physical self-care. Understand that you need to not stay in survival mode. And some of this is, like I said, survival stuff. Hydrate, sleep, exercise, nutrient-dense foods, taking medication, whatever professional visits you need. Understanding that some of this stuff is not accessible for all people because identity can get in the way. Green tea. Green tea has L-theanine-free amino acids. It provides an alert yet relaxed state through activation of alpha brainwaves. Okay, when you couple this with the caffeine that's in green tea, it actually enhances learning and concentration and calms anxiety. It can also promote relaxation. It reduces stress, helps blood pressure, has lots of antioxidants. Green tea is amazing stuff. Massage is good. Be a plant, sit in the sun. It's the most effective treatment for depression. Sexual health, looking after that in all aspects is important. Mental self-care, explore your identity, have patience with yourself, therapy, read, use social media responsibly. So I have a friend who literally sets a timer on her phone for like 10 minutes. That's all she's allowed to scroll. And then she puts it down. Podcasts you might like. Understand a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome, where we keep looking around going, I can't believe that they're letting me do this. It's like when I walked home with my first baby and I'm leaving the hospital and I'm like waiting for someone to stop me saying, you can't take that baby home. You're not responsible enough. Acknowledge when you're overwhelmed. It's okay to be overwhelmed, but trying to push it aside doesn't help. Calm your nervous clam. Sorry about the typo, but calm your nervous system. All of us have different things. For me, it's sitting down and reading a book and drinking a cup of tea. Spend time in nature. Take a humor nap. What is that? Take like a 10-minute break and go watch something or read something or do something that you find funny. Unplug from electronics. I am off social media. I've been off social media for the past week because I just need to get away from it. And understand that it is absolutely okay for you to have lows and highs of feelings. That does happen. Social self care. We need human interaction. So volunteer, spend time with your pets, educate, don't overschedule, make time for friends. Career self care or care of self. Learn to say no. You have paid time off and sick time for a reason. Please use it. List your career goals. What do you want to do? Avoid perfectionism. Understand that and white supremacy are built into the way we do things. Be willing to ask for what you want or delegate or ask for help. Reward yourself when you accomplish something. I have a planner called the Anti-Planner Planner. It is funny to say it, but it's all kinds of activities that help you get over the hump of not wanting to do something. And if you're working remotely, consider co-working. I do it all the time with my friend. We both get on like Zoom or Teams. We talk for like 10 minutes and catch up on books because we're both readers. Then we both hit mute and do our work for the next hour, unmuting ourselves when we have a question or a comment, and we get so much done. It's really fun, actually. Play. You need to play. I don't care if you're an adult. So you can color, you can do puzzles, board games, jump in mud puddles, lay in the grass and cloud gaze, build a snowman, watch a show, read a book for pleasure, not work, make a Pinterest board about something. And then practically, understand your health conditions, find the right caregivers, ask for help, do one thing at a time, change your venue sometimes. Just changing your room can really help you start thinking. Make your bed. It's really nice to get into a freshly made bed. Eat that frog. That means if you have a to-do list, look at the to-do list, pick the thing you least want to do and do it first. The amount of relief you get because it's done is amazing. Focus on your progress and not the results. And habit stack. If you have a habit that you do and you're trying to build a new habit, connect it to the habit you have. So for me, I always have a glass of water when I go to bed. And because I wake up in the morning and get thirsty. My new habit is when I wake up in the morning, I have to drink whatever's left in that glass before I can go to bed. So increase my water intake. If you have children with disabilities, a couple things, and this is going to be the last thing I cover today because we've run out of time. And I'm going to give you time for questions. If you're a parent of children, especially children with disabilities, speak your truth. That means know who you are, what works and doesn't work, what feels in alignment, and be willing to say it. Tell people this is what is going on for my life. But it's okay to tell people I am overwhelmed. Just say no. Be willing to say no. Here's what I do. When someone gives me a request, I have three choices. Yes, no, ask for more information. It's okay if someone asks you something and you say back to them, can you tell me more about what you need? Because that helps you make the decision whether you're going to say yes or no. Don't say yes just because you feel like you should. Release guilt. I know when I've talked to parents, that seems to be a predominant feeling, is that they feel like everyone else's needs are more important than their own. And the minute they try to do something for themselves, they feel guilty. You need to let go of that. Receive help. This is a huge challenge for a lot of people. When someone asks you, is there anything I can do to help? It's okay to say, I would love some help. I'm not quite sure what I need right now. Can you give me a day and check back in with me? So you're accepting the help, but you're not being put on the spot to come up with the miracle cure. Let go of expectations. That is leaning into the situation as it is, leaning into the flow of life. What's going to happen sometimes is going to happen. And that doesn't mean be passive. You should be active, but knowing the end of the road doesn't happen for most of us. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is a huge challenge. None of us like to be uncomfortable, but you have to spend a lot of time intervening, avoiding situations. You might be apologizing to people. You might be, because you could be dealing with almost any issue you can think of times 10. So you're going to be in situations. And finally, find joy. It's really important, even if it's something tiny that brings you joy. Like for me, it's that first sip of coffee every morning. And I make an effort to just sit there and go, oh, that's so good. And I have the same thought every morning, which is whatever human decided to pick beans, roast beans, grind beans, and then throw hot water through them to make a drink was absolutely amazing. That's my moment of joy every day. So, taking care of yourself looks like it's going to depend on you. It's going to depend on you setting your boundaries, being kind to yourself, using your own power to advocate for what you need. So, like I said, I don't have easy answers. I wish I did. I wish I could like wave a magic wand and make everything better for everybody. But this is work and it's hard work and it requires a lot of effort. I know that's asking for a lot when you're trying to juggle everything in your life. But if you can do this piece, you can find yourself moving on and feeling freer and healthier. So thank you. I am really sorry. Had another section I was going to do, but we are definitely out of time. And I
Thank you,
wanted to
Kay.
leave time for questions. So
Right. So that was great information. I put a note about green tea, which I usually don't drink. More of a coffee person.
I am
So,
too. I started incorporating green tea.
so before we get to questions, I've put a link in the chat for the survey, and we're just going to give you a few seconds to see if you could complete the evaluation during this time so we can make improvements and fulfill our grant requirements. So the link is the chat, and I'll just be quiet for a few seconds, and then we'll move into questions. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, or certainly you can raise your hand or just pipe in. There were a few questions asked before during registration, so I'll just read them. I think here you did get them. Someone said that they would like to hear about parents with disabilities.
So I would say it's actually a lot of the stuff I've talked about applies to parents with disabilities. Because I know I live with a physical disability and a learning disability, and I am unkind to myself and I am unkind to my body. So, one of the things I needed to learn, one is those survival level skills, because you can't get anywhere if you're not sleeping, resting, drinking. And if you're not your best self or as close to your best self as you can be, you can't be good for anybody else. Self-compassion is another one. I have the hardest thing for me to do was to accept physical limits that I had. Because I want to be out there running around and doing all this stuff, and I can't. And if I do it one day, I am going to pay for the next three. So, and there are times that's okay. Do you know what I mean? But I consciously make that choice saying, you know something, I am going to go out and run around with my grandson and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then I know I'm going to have to rest for 2 days.
Thank you. So that's another question. How do we get help to help us with our children?
That's a tough one. But one of the things that I really believe in is, and we didn't talk a lot about, is community care. And what that means is finding your community, creating your community, and then leaning on your community, whether it's trading care, whether it's advocating with your agencies for respite, whether it's trading off sometimes. Yes, I used to be a foster parent. And one of the things my partner and I would do is we would trade off to get nights off, and the other person could just go out and do whatever they wanted with their friends or by themselves. And at first, you feel really guilty. Again, guilt is the killer of all things fun. Like, this is selfish. I'm leaving them there with 7 kids or whatever it might be. But sometimes you need to be willing to do that, knowing that you are going to be feeling better. So I think it's with the reality of funding and where we are right now, it's starting to be creative and starting to be willing to like lean on each other and support each other.
I, I agree that'll be really important in the months ahead. I'll just read you a comment. Thanks for this information. It was a real paradigm shift for me to think about like big self-care as opposed to care of self. And it was very helpful for me to recognize, to reorganize those ideas.
Well, thank you. It's just like I said, I'm so tired of people feeling bad about themselves because they don't do self care right.
And Sandra, I see your hand is up, so go ahead.
Yes, it's Sandra. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm very heavy on wellness, self-care, but currently my child, who is on the autism spectrum, 8 years old, was kicked out of the Burlington School District, and we've been at home for like 4 weeks. And I must say that everything I know about self-care has run right through the window because the uncertainties, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's the future going to be like? What's it going to be like for me? How do I put myself in a position where I'm able to help my kid? How do I explain our new normal? And I just wanted to ask that how do parents who live with children with disabilities, how do we navigate these trying times? Because sometimes it's not like we don't know this information. We do, but we are presented with the actual tension and life occurrence, and it just feels like all the information that you have to care for yourself just runs right out the window. How do we get more support? Because every time I am told that there are no staff and there are no like even though there are resources, you can't find staff for PCA, you can't find staff for support. How do we navigate this going forward? I just wanted to hear your opinion on that. Thank you.
So, first of all, again, I'm not the expert, but I think I would talk to the kind folks at Vermont Family Network and talk to a parent advocate and see where you can get support there. Getting support from others is one of the big ones. We don't often think of that as care of self, but it really is because sometimes the things we are going through are so big that they almost paralyze us. And that's the time when you most need to reach out and get support or help. And I know the Vermont Family Network has resources. I know that we are facing a staffing shortage everywhere, that we have challenges. But in the end, one of the things that I also know is life is always uncertain. And if we don't stop and take us, even if it's like I said, when my kids were young, I used to wake up at 5 a.m. to get even 20 minutes to myself just to get my head on so I could face the day. But it's different for everyone. But I think one of the big things is reaching out to your friends, your community, other parents who may have had similar experiences or have child with autism. Those are all really good resources.
I have tried all those resources, and it still comes back to the fact that there are no staff. I've contacted everyone that you mentioned,
Mhm.
and I still find myself in a situation where my child and I are isolated from the community because of the choice that the school made. And so it's like it's heavy. We know these resources exist, but the action or the help isn't there, and that's the frustrating part.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And I wish I had an easy answer for you. I don't, to be really honest. But part of it is also being persistent. If that means you call the school every single day saying, "So have you hired someone yet? Have you hired someone yet? Have you hired someone yet?" Sometimes being annoying gets things done. I hate to say that, but it's true. Um, but the other piece is don't internalize that frustration that you have. Make sure you're talking to friends, make sure you're talking to people. If you are not, the other thing I recommend to everyone, and part of it's my background, therapy is a wonderful thing for you
Mm,
to help you process and work through and think of ideas. Um, but yeah, I don't know all the details of the situation, and this isn't a space to go into all of them.
yeah.
But I think just continuing to talk to people.
Okay. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, and to know that it is recognized in our state that we are short of service providers
Yeah.
in just about every, service area, Sandra. So even though there are no quick results, I know that many people are aware of the shortages.
Yeah, and trying. We're trying to come up all kinds of ways.
Yeah, we are. So we are out of time. If anyone has a burning question. Okay. So thank you so much, Kheya, for sharing this information. There was a lot of good information in there. Will the part that you were not able to present, will that be part of the PDF?
Yes, it will.
Okay. So we'll be able to read the rest, and
Hmm.
I will assume that we can contact you if we have any questions about the parts you didn't actually go over.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. So we have many more interesting workshops coming up for everyone else, and you can find details on that on our website, vermontfamilynetwork.org, and there are links to all of our previously recorded ones. We have a ton of information on our website. Getting connected with us is easy. We do have a presence on Facebook and Instagram, and also we do have closed Facebook pages if you are a parent. And we welcome you to join that if you are a parent. You can also sign up for our monthly e-news, or you can check out our YouTube channel. So contact us by phone or email. We are here for you. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.